Our next speaker is very, very busy. She's also a brilliant economist. So can you please give a wonderful welcome to Miss Vicky Pryce.
Thank you very much. There's no, I hope you can hear me. I'm an economist, as you heard, and I have been looking obviously at what's been happening since the COVID pandemic hit us and what the government measures have been, which actually overall have been very supportive to the economy. I think without that we wouldn't be where we are today, which is with a very low unemployment rate that just came out. But there are a number of issues nevertheless, and of course those who did not receive sufficient support, and remember something like £330 billion was borrowed to ensure that people could survive, that the consumers could still go out and spend, particularly when the restrictions were lifted, but also that people could stay in employment through supporting businesses. There were a few gaps, and one of those of course is for parts of the self-employed, and I think that's what this whole issue is here about. And of course we did have quite an important, very welcome self-employment income support scheme. But we all know, and this is why this group has been established by yourselves, that we had 1.8 million self-employed people and around 700,000 company owner managers who were not eligible to support through the scheme, and that's what it's all about. And for some of these people, the argument could be that HMRC would have found it and the Treasury operationally difficult to access them and know exactly and accurately what the information was in relation to what they had been earning recently and how long they've been self-employed and how they had set it all up and so on. And there is an issue with making sure that the money that is being spent by the public purse and by taxpayers goes to the right people. But of course, in any emergency, when the government has to intervene, you have to accept that a certain percentage is not going to go the right way. So you've got to sort of bear that in mind. And if you look at some of the plights of the people who were excluded, you can understand why many would find this hard to stomach, if you like, that they weren't there. So, and it is true, I think, in terms of the administrative difficulty, that for owner managers and newly self-employed people, that's quite hard to ensure that the information is correct, the money goes the right way. But it's not really the case, and that's not an excuse for the 1.3 million self-employed people who had less than 50% of their income coming from self-employment, or for the 250,000 people who had profits in excess of £50,000, that the government had actively chosen to exclude these people from the scheme. And yet, quite a lot of institutions have looked at this, and think tanks, and the Institute for Fiscal Studies reported in January of this year that more than half of self-employed people with less than 50% of income coming from self-employment had total personal incomes of under £25,000. So we weren't talking about the very rich here. And it means that targeting support of this group would affect quite significantly their incomes, their livelihoods during that period, because they were already on low to middle income groups, really with quite moderate personal incomes. And they also have relatively low levels of self-employment profits coming from their activities. So more than half of that group have profits of less than £5,000 per year. And 45% of that group are women, compared with 35% of those supported by the scheme overall. So they have suffered in a way disproportionately from this. And the cost of intervening in this and actually remedying the situation wouldn't have been that great. The Institute of Fiscal Studies estimated that extending the scheme to those low profit self-employed people would have been relatively cheap in comparison with other spending programs under the government support schemes. The calculation was that it would have been between 500 million and 800 million per quarter, and the average quarterly payments per person would have been just anywhere between £600 and £1,000. So we're not talking about anything really big. So the cost therefore wouldn't have been huge. It would have helped quite a lot of people facing quite a lot of financial hardship, and that is, I think, what this group is asking for. And it's not very surprising, thinking about productivity in the economy, encouraging new entrants generally helps, innovation with new self-employed people thinking of new ideas. That what we've seen is that whereas the number of people in self-employment had been increasing quite steadily, what we've seen recently, and certainly since COVID, is that they've been dropping. And it's interesting again, if you look at the unemployment data that came out just yesterday, when you see that the increase in employment has been 0-hour contracts, short, part-time working, short-term working, so really not the types of jobs that you really want people to be going for as a long-term career, and a fall in self-employment. So the two have gone together, and from an economic perspective, of course, you wonder whether that incentive to do your own thing, start your business, be self-employed when things don't work out in any other way, may be considerably less attractive now than was the case before. So, thank you very much for inviting me to say a few words.
Thank you, Vicky Pryce, there, Chief Economist, brilliant economist, putting it absolutely into perspective.
Thank you very much.
There must be another motive.